Welcome to the Irish NFL show in association with QuinnBet. The evenings are drawing in already. Week 0 of college football is this Saturday, starting, of course, with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin between Kansas State and Iowa State at the Aviva Stadium. We're just over 2 weeks away from week 1 of the 25-26 NFL season, and we turn our attention tonight to the AFC and NFC East divisions as we continue our division-by-division previews. Kieran Boyle, Kieran O'Donovan and Brian O'Leary joining myself, Conor Brophy, for this. And let's go to the NFC East, home, of course, of the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. What a magnificent team they are. Swept all before them, including their division rivals, the New York Giants, of course, last year. And where better to start, Kieran O'Donovan, than with those self-same Philadelphia Eagles. Went 14-3 last year. Looked to be going great guns, then went a bit shaky, then finished the season with a storm and really breezed through the playoffs. I mean, looking back, probably your Packers kind of missed an opportunity to get them when they probably hadn't settled. The Rams did give them a rattle, but after that, I mean, they romped to a Super Bowl. Should we be looking at this team as the presumptive Super Bowl favourites again?
I suppose, I mean, they deserve that accolade anyway, at least of starting out the season that way. And to be fair to Nick Sirianni and the Eagles, throughout the season, I guess we were pretty critical about them as the season went on. We were doubtful of Nick Sirianni and his leadership capabilities. But look, sometimes you have to admit that you were wrong. And I mean, the Eagles, as you said, they absolutely breezed through the regular season. Yeah, fair enough. The Packers had their chances, the Rams had their chances, but really, I mean, they breezed through the playoffs as well, and that was an absolute, a statement that they made in the Super Bowl. So the question becomes, can they run it back? And that's always the question after a team breaks through. Are they going to suffer any kind of a Super Bowl hangover? Signs are that there's no reason to think that they might. And I mean, a repeat is, while it seems on paper that it's a difficult thing to do, it has been done historically. It's been done several times, maybe not so much in recent history, but I mean, they're running back a lot of their consummate leaders. Jalen Hurts has proven that winning is above all else, and he's the kind of guy that you want to lead a team like this. He's not a guy that lets his passing stats or his own contribution get in the way of what's important, and that's the team winning. Jordan Mailata, Zach Bond, you've got all these leaders coming back again. I guess if there's questions about the Eagles, it's can they repeat a 14-3 season? I think they'll find that difficult this year, because I think I think a couple of the teams that we'll talk about in a while are going to play them a lot tougher this year. They have, they've lost a lot of personnel. They have to replace Josh Sweat, Mekhi Becton, Milton Williams, and a lot more. But again, we've seen how Howie Roseman and how he stocks up on areas of need in the last couple of years. And bringing in Jihad Campbell in the draft again just signifies that they're going to, they're bolstering that I suppose that pressure and that aggression on defense that laid the marker for so many of these key wins. I mean, there's no reason to think that they're not going to be a dominant force again this season. And I see them really making a strong case for a repeat within the division and possibly within the conference, and whether that leads them to another Super Bowl, time will tell.
Just to pick up on something you're saying there, and you mentioned Sirianni and giving him his due. I mean, we've criticized him here, and look, he's going to rub people up the wrong way unless you're in Philly, because he makes it all about him. I'm starting to wonder, though, is there a bit of I hesitate to use the phrase, but a bit of a Jose Mourinho about it, in that, yeah, it's annoying, but it does help the players, because it kind of takes all the attention away from them and puts it on him. I make my case here by stating, we said that losing the two coordinators was a big blow to them a couple of years ago, and indeed it did seem to kind of take them a while to get over that, with Shane Steichen going to the Colts and Jonathan Gannon going to the Carolina Panthers and then picking up those head coaching jobs. I'm starting to think it's less and less likely that Shane Steichen is the offensive genius that we all thought he was, given what's happened in Indianapolis, where I think the jury is very much out. Kellen Moore was, the forgotten man, run out the door in Dallas a couple of years ago, comes back and wins a Super Bowl with the Eagles, and now he's his head coaching material himself. He's gone off to a head coaching job. They swap him in for Kevin Pachulo, who's been the passing game coordinator for 4 years, so hopefully there's not a huge lack of continuity there. But, maybe we're undervaluing the Sirianni contribution, and that, he is constant. He's been the one constant there with a lot of change around him. As you say, player defections is going to probably weaken that, they were arguably the strongest player for player roster in the NFL last year. I'm not sure if they necessarily still hold that title, but I think they're going to take some stopping. How do you view them, Kieran Boyle?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to Roseman and what he's built. I mean, this team is just the caliber of player that they lost would cripple multiple teams in the NFL. They would not be able to sustain it. They lost Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Darius Slay, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Brandon Williams retired, or Brandon Graham retired. So you got that level of player that is gone. But again, this is a guy that just builds and builds and builds through the draft. He's picked up Jahad Campbell and he's picked up Andrew Macumba. And it's almost like it's, we got everything we need out of those guys. Let's keep it moving and let's restock. I think this is a team that is 100% the class of the NFC right now. I think everything is in their favor. Hurts is just, he's just powering along. He does what is needed. And for the first time in a long, long time, you got a full season out of Saquon. Now, you temper all that by saying, can Saquon stay healthy for another season? Because that was an anomaly last year. The other, like you said earlier, is the Kevin Patullo kind of question. Is that going to be a little dip in the kind of quality of the offense, or will it not miss a beat, and will they keep producing? Because, I mean, there's very few teams in the NFL that can produce the players that they have on offense, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. However, look at both sides of the line. That, like, some teams have great O-lines and some have great D-lines. These guys are stacked both sides. I mean, that front four of Ajomo, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, and Jalen Carter, that is a phenomenally scary
it's
front
something
four.
We did see in the playoffs, going back to what Kieran O'Donovan was saying, where, I remember that quote from during the season. I can't remember who said it, that the thing about the Eagles is man for man, they're just better than you in all the key positions. It's not necessarily about scheme or about any offensive or defensive genius. It's like their guy is better than your guy, and they win the matchups over and over.
Absolutely. And like you said at the start, they did have a couple of wobbles against the Rams. That game could have gone either way. But, they cleaned up with Washington, and then they absolutely destroyed the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And when we were in New Orleans, obviously a lot of talk was on the Chiefs, and would it be the three-peat, and would this be a big, an easy win for them? But that team physically, I mean, we were in the locker room, me and Brian, after, or the press conferences afterwards. Josh Sweat is probably 6'8" if he's not an inch. I mean, just absolute monsters. And that whole team, just from top to bottom, even the kicker, you go from Hurts all the way down. And when they lose players of the caliber of, Josh Sweat or Darius Slay, they just restock and they almost they don't miss a beat. So for me, that the Eagles, I mean, it's hard to look past them, not only in the East, but even in that whole conference. I think there's so much talent. The coaching is really good. Sirianni looks like he's got it together. And again, when you got Roseman up there with the X's and O's pulling the plug on, or pulling the switch on players, that's a great combination, and they could be around for a good long time right now. So,
Brian, do you agree that they're the class of the NFC, or do you rate them that highly?
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately for me and for Kieran, it's hard to get away from them. Conor, what I would throw out there, if you're looking for some kind of wiggle room for a potential down year, we're talking about changes in their coaching staff. Let's bear in mind the year in which they went to the Super Bowl, and you rightly called out around the fact that Gannon went to the Cardinals and Steichen goes to the Colts. They actually they employed the coordinators internally initially. Sean Desai went defensive coordinator. He was relieved of his duties after a year. Brian Johnson was the offensive coordinator, quickly relieved of his duties also after a year. But they immediately addressed those issues. They recognized that the following season, when they had the downward year, they lost in the playoffs to the Bucs, that they didn't get it right, and they brought in Fangio, they brought in Moore. Kellen Moore has moved on. So it does feel like it's a bit of a conveyor belt for them that, year after year, they're finding ways to replace coordinators. Some work, some don't. But they quickly address the issue. They don't hang around. And now this year, okay, they got one coordinator coming in. The defense is kind of, they've lost a couple of players defensively, but they've restocked. Even last week, the trade again to bring in a wide receiver from the Texans that's had a mixed period. He could avail of a really good opportunity there. It's hard to get away from them, even in a division that's stacked as it is. They're up there. Saquon's coming back. I do caveat things like Saquon didn't get injured at all last year, which is unusual for a running back. He didn't pick up one injury. Bearing in mind the injury play career he had for large parts with the Giants, it's you're going to keep these players healthy. AJ Brown, if he's on his game, is fantastic. Smith. Sometimes these players, when they're not getting the ball, they're a bit disappointed. But it's hard to. We're struggling to find reasons as to why this team will not be in the playoffs and certainly challenging to be in Santa Clara come February. I think they'll win the division.